everyone, welcome to our In Dialogue series. This week, the Louisiana Children's Museum is excited to be joined by the Parenting Center at Children's Hospital New Orleans. My name is Megan Miller, and I'm a gallery manager at the museum. Right now, while the museum building is closed, our team members have been working to bring you new ways to interact with the topics that are most important to our community. Through our In Dialogue series, our goal is to connect you with resources to continue to support your child's learning and well-being. Our museum and the Parenting Center offer countless experiences to support your child's learning through play. Today, we're talking about school readiness and how to use play and everyday experiences to promote skills that will prepare your child for school. So before I introduce our facilitator, I want to share a new resource coming to the museum. We have been working on a set of school readiness rack cards, which will include ideas and activities caregivers can do at the museum and at home with their children. The rack cards focus on the subjects of math, literacy, science, and social studies in grades pre-K through second. So be on the lookout for these resources when the museum reopens, and be sure to talk to our staff members about other standards and topics that our galleries cover. But today we have one session facilitator from the Parenting Center, and her name is Patrice Wright.
Hi.
So prior to joining the Parenting Center team in October 2018, Patrice began her career in education as a kindergarten teacher. She then became a math coach, a Louisiana State Department employee, a school administrator, and also worked in central office. Throughout her 22 years in education, she thoroughly enjoyed providing professional development and coaching to teachers. Her passion for working within the early childhood sector never faded, and she firmly believes that giving children a solid foundation in their early years sets their path for academic success. She received an undergraduate degree in early childhood education and a master's degree in educational administration from UNO. She is a Louisiana Pathways trainer and a toddler class observer. A mother of one daughter, Patrice teaches school readiness classes for parents of teens, and shares in staffing the Metairie Center. So if you have any questions throughout this presentation, please submit them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And I will now turn the presentation over to Patrice. Go ahead.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Before going any further, I'd like to acknowledge a couple of my teammates who are here today. I'd like to acknowledge Jenny Evans, who will be serving in a co-facilitative role. And also we have Monet Somerville. So those two individuals from the Parenting Center are here to make sure I do a good job. So that's their role today. Thanks for tuning in. Today's session is all about school readiness, talking about the importance of how everyday experiences matter. Before going any further, just kind of want to give you a little bit of an idea of how the framework of our session will work. What we'll do is possibly take a couple of brain breaks where I'll just pause for a minute and have you process and think about the information that may have been shared. It may give you a chance to write down a question or simply reflect on what was said. So we'll do that throughout. And then at some point, Jenny will come back in and have a few questions, or if you type questions in the chat box, we'll be able to address them at that time. So let's get started. Thanks for being here, and let's talk about school readiness. All right, let's talk a little bit about learning. Let's talk the importance of where learning, what learning is, and kind of what the overall definition is at this point. It begins at birth with the support of parents and caregivers. So here you notice parents and caregivers are instrumental in supporting learning of children beginning at birth. Children learn well when all senses are engaged with things and people through imitation, repetition, and by exploring. My desire for you today is to be able to do several things. One, I want you to be able to identify school-ready skills or characteristics, and two, be able to learn ways to prepare children for school. So when you think about what the focus of today's session is, this is what I'm hopeful you're walking away with. Let's talk a little bit about the definition of school readiness as it relates to the National Education Association. According to the NEA, school readiness refers to academic knowledge, independence, communication, and social skills children need to do well in school. Getting your child ready for school requires you to spend time reading, talking, and playing with them. So you're probably doing some of this already. So the next slide, we'll talk about another definition of what school ready looks like. So in the previous slide, we talked about what NEA says school readiness looks like. And then this slide, we're going to talk about 0 to 3's definition of what a school ready child looks like. So a school ready child, according to 0 to 3, has trust and confidence. That kind of comes from relationship building. They're curious, curiosity and communication, empathy, resilience, and self-control, persistence, creativity, and cooperation. So my goal today is to take what NEA says is considered to be a school-ready child and what 0 to 3 says are characteristics of a school-ready child, and marry them in a way to where as you're going throughout your days, you can say, oh, NEA says this, 0 to 3 says that. I'm going to bring it all together and make it make sense for me and my household. So let's get started. Academic readiness. Now remember, this was the first thing that NEA said was a school readiness skill, to have academic readiness. So children should be able to know the basic know of themselves, their families, and the world around them. They should be able to make sense of the world through play. Play is important. They make sense of the world by playing. Through play and interactions with caring adults, children go to school with the skills teachers can build on. Remember, as parents, we are the first teachers. So it is our responsibility at home to give them some of the readiness skills that they can then go to school and their teachers can build on. So let's look at what are some examples of that. Reading to your child daily and talking to them about what they've read. Many of you, I'm sure, are already doing that. You're finding a way to incorporate reading in your daily life or in your child's life, whether that's transition from nap time to or before they take their nap, if it's a transition to bedtime. I'm pretty confident that many of you are incorporating reading in your child's daily life. You're going to start to see these color codes. The reason I'm pulling up these color codes is because here is now where I am starting to marry what NEA says to what 0 to 3 says. So these color codes are going to start becoming a little bit more meaningful to you. I'm not going to get into exactly what they are. That's going to be on the next slide. But my goal is, as we're continuing to talk about what NEA says school readiness is, I want to show you how those things are similarly tied to the characteristics according to 0 to 3. So are we good there? All right. Give your child puzzles and games that require counting and problem solving. This is something else. Now, when you think about academic readiness, this is pretty much the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of learning. So as I'm addressing the academic side of things, just remember this is going to be the things that are truly going to involve ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. So here is a color code. Take your child to children's museum, park, grocery store, post office, and pet shop. Talk about the sights and sounds of your day. This is extremely important because this is also a time that you teach your child to be communicative and to have them talk about the experiences that you're having or they're having as you're in and out of these places. Let your child scribble, draw, write, cut, and paste. Here at the Parenting Center, we know sometimes it's not fun working with certain utensils like maybe paint, but this is also a time where you can expose your child to this, because now I want you to think in terms of allowing your child to use paint to draw and to write is now creating an opportunity for them to be more academic or school ready, right? So now let's link the art activity to making sure that they are school ready. Hopefully that put a different spin on it. So pull out that art, pull out the paint, and start to let your kids scribble, draw, write, cut, and paste. And then finally, sing songs, rhyming songs, and do finger plays. Here is where it's important for you as parents to pull out your knowledge of things like the Itsy Bitsy Spider and Jack and Jill. Go and find all those different nursery rhymes and sing songs with the desire to help them become academic ready for school, okay? And there's another color code there. So now that we know, according to NEA, here is one of the skills that's necessary for a child to be academically ready. Let's look at how that plays into what 0 to 3 said. Pay attention to your color codes here. Whew, here we go. So a curious child, if you wanted to find a way to make sure your child is curious or spark curiosity in your child, reading books would be one way to do that. And you saw that we talked about reading books on the previous slide. So exposing your kids to books gives them an opportunity to be curious. A curious child at home becomes a curious child at school. So you see the turquoise color has to do with being creative. So when they're drawing and you're giving them different utensils to draw and color and write with, you're allowing their creativity to come out, right? Now let's look at when they're doing a puzzle, which was on the previous slide. According to NEA, an academic ready child has an opportunity to sit and complete puzzles. Persistence is a skill that they're practicing here. And parents, this is an opportunity for you to start to teach your child or children to ask for help when needed versus you going to them when you think they're struggling. Allow them to be persistent and complete the puzzle without going in to finish it for them. This is also an opportunity for you to teach them the word help. I will come to you and assist you when you ask me for help. If you don't ask for help, I am thinking that you're completely comfortable with completing this task. So allow them to be persistent in the completion of puzzles. And finally, with communication, we talked about allowing them an opportunity to read books on a regular basis. So now you are, according to 0 to 3, giving them the communication skill that's necessary for them to be successful in school. That was a mouthful. I'm going to stop for a minute, a few seconds, allow you to process. I'm going to share with you where we've been and where we're going. So we've talked about academic readiness according to NEA, and now I've just infused some of those 0 to 3 characteristics of what it takes to make your child school ready. Before moving on, if you have a question, now is a good time to jot it down. And now we're going into the next academic readiness skill according to NEA. So let's go. Independence. What? That's just as important, teaching your child to be independent. When children complete basic self-help tasks, such as tying their shoes or putting their clothes on, they feel a great sense of pride. Independence builds confidence and self-esteem. Let them do it by themselves if they are developmentally ready for that. So let's talk about examples of what independence looks like according to NEA. Encourage independent toileting and hand washing when appropriate. We do realize that some of these things will be different for different children. So be mindful of where your child is developmentally. And I have a resource at the end of this presentation so that you are much more familiar with what this looks like. Let your child get dressed and put on shoes by him or herself. That's a skill many toddlers can handle. If they're unable to put their shoes on at this time, simply ask them to go and get their shoes. That could be the first step of teaching them to be independent. Go grab your shoes for me. We're going to be ready to go soon. If you grab your shoes, I will put them on for you. A couple of color codes coming in. Let your child do simple chores like cleaning up toys after play. From the early childhood world, we all know that clean up, everybody, everywhere, sing that song. It encourages them to clean up, and it makes it a lot more fun than just saying, it's time to clean up, Jenny. Monet, please, let's go. Make it engaging, make it fun, and just know with doing so, you're teaching your child to be school ready in the arena of independence. There's a color code there as well. Let your child, again, independently work on activities such as completing puzzles. We've seen this in the academic readiness side. So it's just as important with the independence because, again, you're allowing them to complete a task, to work on it from beginning to end, and only ask for your assistance when they need it. So when they're dressing, they're building confidence according to the 0 to 3 characteristics of what school readiness looks like. They're being cooperative or they're cooperating when they're cleaning up. You can be doing it with them as a way to help them build independence. And once again, there is that green colored symbol or visual that represents persistence. And we saw this in academic readiness as well. All right. Moving on to the next skill, social readiness. Oh my goodness, how big is this one? Being able to get along with other children, follow directions, take turns, and say bye to parents are skills teachers hope to see from incoming children. Just giving you a little bit of insight. A lot of times the kids are able to do this at the start of the school year. It's the parents we have to console and hug and love on. So our kids are pretty independent and they're ready to go and meet new friends. Parents are not ready to let go. So parents, we're going to need you to understand that when you are preparing your child to be school ready, the social readiness piece is just as important. So when you're going somewhere, if you're leaving the house, go ahead and start telling them, bye-bye, goodbye, I'll see you later, I'll be back. So that will help them to be able to walk away from you as you drop them off at the school door. So let's look at some examples of how do you as a parent assist your child with becoming socially ready at school. Set rules and give consequences for breaking them and stick with it. Many times as parents, we give empty threats. We say we're going to do this and that doesn't happen. At the school level, there's usually, particularly in an early childhood setting, there are going to be a set of rules that students must follow. So at home, if you start allowing them to break a rule, or when they break a rule, you give a consequence for it every time. When they get to school, that will be the same, it will be the same format, right? So having the consequences or the rules and giving consequences for breaking them. But don't forget, when the opportunity presents itself, to go back and have some conversation about what the inappropriate behavior may have been at that moment. So kids start to understand, I'm upset with you because of your behavior, not you, the child. So we want to separate the behavior or the inappropriate behavior from the child, him or herself, right? Have regular routines for mealtime and bedtime and stick with that. So being able to continually have your routines for meals and bedtime will be important at home and just as important at school, because believe me, every day we go to lunch at 11:15, we leave the classroom, we get to the cafeteria, and we're there from 11:15 to 11:45. So helping them to understand routines, and this is how it happens at home, makes an easy transition when they get to school. Encourage your child to finish difficult tasks or frustrating tasks once they have begun them. So again, the power of words with, when you need my help, I am here. Other than that, I'd like you to complete the task from beginning to end. There's their persistence come up. I see persistence there. Model and discuss positive ways for your child, shouldn't be our child, pardon the error, for your child to express his or her feelings. So if your child's at a point where they're having a meltdown, or some may call it a temper tantrum, validate what the feeling is at that moment and have some expression or dialogue with that child about how they're feeling, okay? And then you as parents, we as parents have to model that. So when we're driving down the street and a car cuts us off, we have to remember that we're in emotional control of that situation and we are modeling how to handle that. And we don't want that there to be a temper tantrum from us as a parent, because you have these little eyes on you. and they're watching every single thing you do. So remain in control, acknowledge how you're feeling at that moment, but with everything in you as much as possible, keep it moving. So let's look at how 0 to 3 has married some of the characteristics that they feel are important for a child to be school ready with the social readiness skills that NEA says are important here. That red one is communication. We're going to start to see that a lot of times. I'm sorry, I missed one. Let's go back to the kiss and hug your child several times a day. Love, right? What the world needs now is love, but kiss and hug your child several times a day. That lets them know you're there, you're working on something, you're working towards trust. They know if something happens, they can come to you. It's important for you to put your arms around your child, say positive things to them, give them a kiss, and hug them as much as possible. If you have a child near you right now, just for the sake of it, go ahead and give that child a kiss or a hug right now. I'm gonna wait. Good job, parents, good job. All right, so as it relates to social readiness, resilience, you're building resilience when you are working with a child on a difficult or frustrating task, right? Teaching them to just kind of get over it. Yes, something has happened, but we can get through this. Persistence, again, finishing the task. Teaching them self-control when you set those rules and those boundaries at home that can easily transfer into the school environment. Because I'm going to be honest with you, there will be consequences for behavior, and the teachers will work on making sure that happens every time. Because remember, if it's a pre-K setting, they have 20 kids that they're trying to monitor and manage at one time. So if there is 1 or 2 that's not following the rules, they have to make sure to stay in tune with that, or else they're going to have a classroom where everybody's just doing what they like to do. Little to no self-control. So you're helping teachers by setting rules and giving consequences when inappropriate behaviors happen. Trust, kisses and hugs. You're building trust when you're loving on them, hugging on them, letting them know when something goes wrong, whether it be now or later, I am here to comfort you and I am here to help you through that situation. Communication, discussion of feelings, right? We talked about being in self-control, you as the parent modeling what that looks like when it comes to feelings, and also empathy. So you're teaching your kids to have these school-ready skills according to 0 to 3 by simply doing some of the activities outlined through the National Education Association. Here's another stopping point. Take a breather, write down your question, and we'll go on from here. The final one has to do with communication skills. How important is that? Being able to effectively communicate. I need to do this. I need to do that. Miss Jenny, I don't understand. Miss Monet, can you help me with this assignment? So the communication piece is extremely important in helping your child become school ready. So listening and speaking are the first steps to reading and writing in the preschool years. Through conversations with parents and friends, children learn about the people, places, and objects they will later read and write about. Those experiences that you're having right now at home could ultimately be things that they are writing and drawing about. Now, I'll give you an example. I know that families are home now because of COVID-19. Megan, you might be at home with your child and so much is going on. Start to take pictures of some of the activities you're doing during this COVID-19 time. And you can make those pictures conversation starters. So, oh, remember the day that we did the game Twister? How fun was that? Oh my goodness, look at this picture. If you had to draw or write a story about this, what would your story be? What if someone who did not participate in this game saw this picture and they wanted to know what's going on? What would you tell them? How would you tell them? Would you draw another picture? Like, you know, the first stage of writing is scribbling. You can actually teach your children to do that, and we may talk a little bit more about that. But let's talk about some examples of how parents can help their children acquire the communication skills needed for them to be successful in school. Talk to your child on a regular basis. And even if they're not at a point where they're talking back, you can do what's called either self-talk or parallel talk. So self-talk involves you being a commentator. You know, the job of a commentator at a football game has to do with him just telling everything that's going on around him, the good, the bad, the ugly. But the commentator keeps the communication going so that everybody knows what's going on around them. Today, I want you to become a commentator. So if your child is a little baby or a toddler that has not started talking yet, it's your job to tell him everything that's going on around you. If you're in the kitchen and you're cooking, you can tell your child what you're doing. I'm preparing dinner. I'm gonna go get the pot out of the cabinet. I'm gonna grab the spaghetti. Oh, I think we're gonna have meatballs and spaghetti tonight. It's gonna be a wonderful dinner. So just remember, you are the commentator and you're narrating what you're doing through self-talk. Parallel talk involves you sitting next to your child as you're completing this puzzle. You are helping him or her with the pieces of the puzzle, and you can say, oh my goodness, I found a part to the face. What part did you find? Oh my goodness, I see you found a part for his leg. We're talking about body parts. I bet this puzzle is all about body parts, and at some point we're gonna find another ear. Let's just keep going until we can complete this puzzle. But the parallel the parallel talk involves you sharing not only what you're doing, but also what the child is doing seated next to you. So have those regular conversations, right? Encourage your child to listen and respond to others when they speak. Some kids might be shy, but as often as possible, get them into the habit of responding or talking to people. Usually starts with family members because that's who they're most familiar with. At some point, you know, stranger danger kicks in, so don't go encouraging, hey, talk to everybody, but at least talk to those individuals within your immediate circle to start to encourage your child to not only listen, but to respond when others ask them something or speak to them. Answer your child's question, even if the answer is no. Sometimes when a child goes to preschool or pre-K or a Head Start setting, mom has said yes, yes, yes so much that now the child is starting to hear the answer of no. So make sure that you're saying no and ask questions or answer questions as much as possible, contingent upon your child's ability to understand. Help your child learn and use new words. Don't be afraid to pull out those new big words. It's okay. You want to be able to make sure that you are equipping your child with the necessary vocabulary to do well in school. People who speak well or children who come into school speaking well ultimately translates that into writing well. So a good speaker turns into a great writer, okay? Use those big words as often as possible. And here we go again, exploring language through singing, rhyming songs, and chants. It could be a trip to the grocery store. We're going to the store. We're going to the store. Hi ho the dairy-o, we're going to the store, right? So now let's look at, and then model the language you want your child to use. Okay, making sure that you are speaking exactly how you would want your child to speak. So model the language, and remember, those little eyes are listening and watching at all times. So make sure your language is exactly what you would want your child to use when they step into a school setting. So I'm gonna back up for a second because I want you to see communication skills. When you think about communication skills, that's all about just being communicative, right? So here you see it here, those regular conversations, talking about new words. When it comes to curiosity, you're exploring language by singing. So if I start singing this song that a child is unfamiliar with, they're curious and gonna wanna know what's the next part of that song, right? They may want to hear additional nursery rhymes. that you might have. And then here comes the characteristic of confidence under the area of communication skills. When you're teaching them new words, it builds their confidence. And it can be the difference between when they go to school, if they answer a question that the teacher asks, or if they just sit and not say anything at all. So just remember, the constant conversations that you're having with your child is one way to make sure that they are successful in communicating with their teachers, communicating with their friends. That was a lot of information. I'm going to take a stopping point right here. But if you're saying, what are you talking about, Patrice? You've just been talking a lot of, what does all of this mean? So let's do a brief recap. NEA says, here are the skills necessary for a child to be successful. They have to have academic readiness, they have to be independent, they have to have social readiness, and they also have to be communicative or communication skills, right? So we're good with what NEA says, and we looked at a whole bunch of examples. And then 0 to 3 says, and while you're doing all that, just make sure they have self-control, they're confident, they have curiosity, their trust. I see confidence there 2 times, I apologize. Communicative, empathetic, creative, have resilience, right? So now, these all work hand in hand. So as parents, we can definitely find a way to make sure that as we're talking about what academic readiness looks like on one side, we're also infusing as many opportunities as we possibly can, infusing these characteristics that 0 to 3 says a child must have to be school ready. A lot of information. Here is a stopping point. Grab a pen if you need to write down a question, if you need to process a lot. I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to do that. So let's look at this from a big picture standpoint. A school-ready child equals a successful child in school and in life. Some of those characteristics that we talked about will be with your child long after they have come out of school, they've graduated from high school. If you're teaching your child to be empathetic, that's going to stay with them for the remainder of their life. So think about some of these school readiness characteristics and skills as things that you're doing to make sure your child is not only successful in school, but also successful in life. We talked a little bit earlier about if your child, knowing where your child is developmentally. I want to bring in the developmental stages because I think this is important for parents to know as well. So knowing where your child is developmentally will be extremely helpful. For example, 2-year-olds don't fully grasp sharing, and they probably will not share. So that's a high expectation that you may have of a 2-year-old that they're not ready for. So just be mindful of that. At age 3 is when children begin to understand sharing and turn taking. Also at age 3, there is a basic understanding of numerical concepts like this is 1 and this is 2. Now CDC provides a list of developmental milestones that you can go and look at. Now remember, children develop differently. So this doesn't say if your child is 18 months, this is exactly what they should do at this time. This just gives you an idea of some of the skills or the developmental milestones that they should be, that should be going on with them at that time. I want you to think about where your child is. So if you have a 2-year-old right now, think about it from present to past to future. What do I mean by that? If your child is 2 years old, look to see what they mastered as a 1-year-old, right? Look to see what the 1-year-old milestones were. And then also look ahead to see what the 3-year-old milestones are, because that's a way of saying, here is where my child is currently at. Here is where they've been when I look at 1-year-old milestones, and here is where they're going when I think about the milestones for a 3-year-old. So CDC website, you can simply Google CDC milestones and you should be able to find them. If not, I'll put our number at the end of this presentation. You can reach out to us for any of these supplemental or resources that we're talking about in this session today. So now it's like, okay, you've given me all this information. What do you want me to do with this? How am I supposed to teach all of those skills? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. In education, we call it chunking, right? So if you want to know how to teach this, you can start with a week and say, hey, week 1 is all about independence. You bring your family to the table and you're like, guess what? We are teaching Megan independence this week. We do all things independence. We're teaching independence. We're teaching independence. Hi-ho the dairy-o. We're teaching independence. Get everybody on board. So at every chance you have and your family members have, you allow that child to do as much as possible on their own. That could simply be after the bath, they take the towel and go bring it to the utility room. They pick up their clothes out of their room. But if everybody's on board, this helps your child master this skill much faster than you trying to do all of these different things at one time. Don't forget your characteristics that we talked about that are linked to independence as well. Week 2, this is all things academics. This is our week that's all about academics. But don't forget about independence, because although you're teaching academics in week 2, find an opportunity to pull in the chances for your child to be independent. So you're working on academics at one time, but you're kind of spiraling it in. We call it spiraling in education, those independent skills. Week 3, social skills. Week 4, communication. That's just one way that you can start working on it. It makes it easy. It keeps the focus on something for an extended period of time. And it's not where you're giving them all of these different activities or things you're trying to do to make sure they're school ready. They can't be school ready in 1 week. They can't be school ready in 1 month. This is something that is a journey and that will take time. So just be mindful of that. Here is an additional resource. Here is the National Education Association. Just a couple of days ago, I went on to their website and you can see they have some articles on keeping kids curious. How do you keep kids curious? And then providing emotional support. And here are some of the characteristics that 0 to 3 mentioned are important for kids to be school ready. In addition to that, this is 0 to 3's website, and this is the early learning area where you can go and find additional resources on specific topics that will be helpful in you preparing your child for school readiness. So at this time, there is going to be a survey that will be linked to the chat box. But this is also a good time to answer any questions, Jenny, from anyone that may have come in, or if there are any questions that you guys may have, now is a great time to answer those questions.
Okay. The first question is, my young child wants to do things she can't do and gets frustrated. How can I help with persistence and not take over?
The child is wanting to do things but gets frustrated. How can you help without taking over? You can start by, whatever the task is, sitting next to that child and doing it with her and say, today, we're going to learn how to, throw out an example, please. What are we going to learn how to do today? We're going to learn how to
put shoes on.
We're going to learn how to put shoes on. Come sit next to me. I'm going to put my shoes on first. And this is not going to be very easy. So I'm going to take my time to make sure I get this right. Watch. I'm going to open up my shoe so that my foot can go inside. I'm putting on my left shoe. I'm putting on my right shoe. I want you to try it, but I need you to know that I'm right here next to you. So remember your word help. I'm going to get it. I'm going to let you go. added until you need my help. But listen, this is not something I want you to get frustrated about. We're going to take our time and we're going to do it until we perfect it. Okay? Let's practice together. Ready? Watch. I'm going to put my shoes on. Oh my goodness, I have to get my shoes on. Now I have my other shoe on. It's your turn. Why don't you go ahead and try it? And then I'm going to help you. When the frustration starts to set in, you can say, oh my goodness, I see that this might be frustrating. You can't get it at this time. I want you to know I understand, but we're going to keep at it until we get it right. Mama's here, and we're going to try it day after day after day.
Okay, next question. Thank you. Next question. What if my child is not talking by 3 years old?
If your child is not talking by 3 years old, the first thing you want to do is bring up your concern to your pediatrician and talk to your pediatrician about what he or she considers to be next steps. Remember, I mentioned earlier that every child develops differently. It's not to say that your child won't talk. It may not be time for your child to talk, but working with your pediatrician and having some clear-cut examples of how your child communicates would be helpful to the pediatrician. How and what role are you playing in your child not communicating? For example, when your child points at something, are you giving him or her the language of what he or she is pointing to, or are you just going to get what they're requesting? In other words, oh, I see you're pointing at the refrigerator. Do you want something out of the refrigerator? Come on, let's go see what's in the refrigerator. So 1, talk to your pediatrician, but 2, model language on an ongoing basis and have some kind of record that you can share with your pediatrician around how your child does communicate, because communication doesn't necessarily have to be verbal. Verbal is not going to come for some. Verbal is going to come later, but they might be communicating by just pointing at things and you're responding. Is that what you want communication to look like in your home? Probably not.
Okay, you kind of answered this, but the next question is similar. It says, how can I encourage my child to talk to others in a social setting?
Remember those developmental milestones as well. You are not going to have a child that may be outwardly ready to talk to some kids or talk to others. Your child might simply be shy and may not be ready for that interaction. But I'm going to go back to the encouragement of feeling good and having safe conversations with family members. Having family members on board with saying, you know, when you come over for the weekend, go sit down and ask Jenny what she's been doing. Go sit down and see if you can do a puzzle or something with her. You have to realize that at some point, children begin to have fears as well, and this may not be something that they're ready for. But with your support, with your love, and with your modeling, those people that are out in the public that are strangers now will just become people that your child will eventually talk to. So hang in there. Any other suggestions or any other comments? Anybody want to chime in? Come on. Now is a good time.
I was only thinking that I would add that we consider if your child at 18 months is, you don't feel like they're moving along as far as language development, then we always, we know your pediatrician will also tell you to seek an evaluation, because we want to make sure, obviously, that children can hear. So I hear Patrice talking a lot about encouraging communication, but the other end of that is just the health side of speech. But speaking of milestones, the next question is the next question is a quickie. It says, is there an app for the CDC developmental milestones? And there is. Yeah.
There should be. However, that would be something that I personally don't have the answer to at this moment. I catch CDC by way of just a desktop or a laptop. If someone else knows the answer to that, feel free to chime in. But with all of the ways that different organizations are becoming tech savvy, I would go with there probably is, but it's not definitive.
Yeah, I think they do have an app. And it's got really cool information, but I like your milestone sheets even better. I think when it comes to an app that goes with the themes that you're talking about today, I would go with that Join Vroom app that we like
Yes.
so much. That's a fun one. And then the last question, Patrice, that we have in the box is, we are considering homeschooling. Is there any different approach we need to take? All of this that you say seems relevant. I'm just kind of checking.
Yes. So in terms of homeschooling, one great resource that I would refer you to would be the Louisiana State Department of Education, but the website itself is called Louisiana Believes. There is a department where you can actually speak to someone or an individual who would be able to share with you exactly what you need to consider and how the skills and concepts that may be required of a pre-K student or a kindergarten student, where you can find that information. So in other words, the same way that a teacher follows a scope and sequence of what children are supposed to learn between the beginning of the year and the end of the year is outlined for parents as well. I would also find, like maybe on Instagram or Facebook, see if you can find a group of people that are already homeschooling and see if you have a chance to talk to someone that's doing that and ask them to share with you some of the pros and some of the areas of concern that they may have as a family. They may be all for it, but there are some things that you may want to know before you make that decision rather than after you've already made the decision. So Louisiana Believes is a great place, a great resource. You know, finding social media groups that are homeschooling groups and then talking to other parents that are homeschooling their kids, I think would be a great place to start.
Okay, those were the only questions. Are you going to talk about next week or should I?
Next week, we're going to talk about the importance of talking and how you can use talking to teach. So I'd love to have you guys back. This has been wonderful. Jenny, you can add a little bit more to that if you'd like to. Megan, you can jump in as well to share more about next week. But I think I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to mute myself right now.
For me, what's so exciting about the way these 2 weeks come together is listening to Patrice talk today about all these things that really apply to like 3 and 4 year olds, and the 0 to 3 stuff obviously starts a lot younger, and I feel like that material is going to be a lot more exciting next week. So so parents who are thinking about those the communication piece and the trust piece and all of that will really enjoy hearing the talking is teaching side of the school readiness conversation. So that's just, yeah. Anything else, Megan?
Yes. Is there anything you want to add, Megan?
No, that's all great. I think we're all really looking forward to next week with Talking is Teaching. I think it's great for our little ones, but it's also great for kids of all ages. You know, kids always need their parents to talk to them and model for them expectations. So we are excited to have you guys back next week and teach us even more.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And check out the survey in the chat. We'd love to get your feedback. And thank you
a lot. Hope to see you guys next week. Enjoy your day.
Yes, and thank you guys at the Parenting Center for joining us.
No problem, Megan. Anytime.